Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to our series on transport in humans. In our last set of videos, we looked at blood, what is found in blood, and the different functions of blood. Now, in this set of videos, I would like to start off with something different. We're going to listen to a song together. And in this song, you're going to find lots of references to the circulatory system. Alright, so just have a look, have a listen, and sing along. Okay, I think you get the point. Bleeding. Yes, we're going to start this set of videos by talking about bleeding. So yes, bleeding. Blood flowing out of your body. But it's not that simple. Did you know that there are 3 different types of bleeding? Yes, there is the spurting, pulsating kind of bleeding, the sort that you see in horror movies, which is just so scary. Then there's the steady, slow flow kind of bleeding, where the blood tends to be darker red in color. And then the slow, even flow, most commonly seen from day-to-day injuries. But why are there 3 types of bleeding? And why do we even bleed in the first place? Well, the simple answer is we bleed when our blood vessels are damaged. And it turns out, hopefully you remember, that there are 3 main types of blood vessels. And the 3 types are the arteries, the veins, and capillaries. And depending on which type is damaged, you'll get different patterns of bleeding. So in this set of videos, we're going to look closer at arteries, veins, and capillaries. Our learning objectives: looking at how does blood flow through the circulatory system, how is the structure of arteries and veins and capillaries related to their function. Again, structure and function, an important theme in biology. And finally, we're going to zoom in on the capillaries and see how substances are exchanged or moved between the capillaries and the cells of the body. So here are the textbook pages, and we're going to get going. Alright, so in the human circulatory system, blood flows in blood vessels. And we've seen that there are 3 main types of blood vessels, namely the arteries, veins, and capillaries. Now, because blood flows inside blood vessels, we say that the human circulatory system is a closed system. I'm not going to go too much into it, but just a point of awareness for you, because there are circulatory systems which are called open circulatory systems. If you're interested, you can take a look at insects, you can take a look at snails, my favorite animal. Those have open circulatory systems. Okay, let's start with a simple question. I want you to think, what is the difference between arteries and veins from what you know? Alright, thought about it? Did you think that arteries were blood vessels which transport oxygenated blood, while veins were those which transport deoxygenated blood or oxygen-poor blood? Well, that would be quite close to the answer, but it is not the answer. Now, the key difference between arteries and veins is not the kind of blood that they transport. The key difference between arteries and veins is about the direction of blood flow. Now, what do I mean? Let's take a closer look. So what's an artery? Well, an artery is a blood vessel which carries blood away from the heart. If you find it difficult to remember, just remember arteries start with A, away also starts with A. So here's a heart, right? Now, if a blood vessel takes blood from the heart and carries it somewhere else, that would be an artery. It doesn't matter what kind of blood is inside here, as long as it's away from the heart, that's an artery. Now, on the other hand, veins are blood vessels which carry blood toward the heart. So again, it doesn't really matter what kind of blood is inside here. As long as the blood is being carried into or toward the heart, then this blood vessel is called a vein. So what's a capillary then? Well, a capillary is usually what lies between the arteries and veins. And we'll look at that a bit more later. They link the arteries and veins, so you'll find capillaries somewhere in between. And they are where substances are exchanged between the blood and tissue cells. so the rest of the body cells, will be interacting with the capillaries to exchange substances, as we'll see in the rest of this set of videos. Alright, so here's a diagram of the heart and some blood vessels. So obviously this is the heart, and we just saw that the heart pumps blood to arteries, right? Arteries carry blood away from the heart. Now arteries themselves will branch into smaller blood vessels, which we call arterioles, right? So these are like mini arteries. Okay, so the arteries branch out into arterioles, and the arterioles themselves then branch out into capillaries. Now it's at the capillaries that there's interaction again with the tissue cells. So that's where the tissue cells will exchange substances with the capillaries, including oxygen. So for example, oxygen will move out from the capillaries to the tissue cells in the body. And then the capillaries would then join back together again to form venules. Alright, venules are kind of like mini veins. Right, so on the way to becoming veins. So capillaries join together to form venules, and venules themselves join together to form veins, and then the veins will carry blood back to the heart. Okay, in this diagram, red color of course represents oxygen-rich blood, and blue oxygen-poor blood. And of course, this is the heart pumping out blood to the rest of the body, right? So for example, the muscles that are working very hard in your leg, supplying oxygen to them and then bringing back carbon dioxide from them. Alright, so for the rest of this video, we're going to take a closer look at the structure of the blood vessels, namely the structure of arteries, veins, and capillaries. Okay, you can ignore these alphabets for now. So what you see here are actually pictures taken from a microscope, looking at an artery, looking at a vein, and looking at a capillary in cross section. Okay, what do I mean? If I have an artery like this, and I take a cross section, means I cut it down this way, and take a look at it, I will see something like this. So what you can see are the different layers in each blood vessel, and the different shapes of each kind of blood vessel. So we're going to look at what is the structure of each one, how they are different from one another, and why they are different from one another. And we're going to see that the structure of each blood vessel fits their particular function. Okay, so let's begin with the arteries. Now if you take a look at these three pictures, they're all pictures of the cross section of arteries. Now what do you see? How many layers do you see? I think it's very clear, especially clear in this picture here. So hopefully you see that there's this kind of outer layer here, right? And then there's this inner layer here, this one here. And then this of course is the lumen of the artery, the opening. This is where the blood flows through the artery. Okay, so one layer, two layer, and then the lumen. So let's label the artery. Okay, so this outer layer is called the layer of connective tissue. Okay, it's the layer which kind of holds the whole artery together. Okay, the second layer here, this especially thick layer, is actually made out of smooth muscle and elastic fibers. So this is a layer of smooth muscle and elastic fibers. Very stretchy, able to stretch, and also able to contract and to relax. As you'll see why that is important in just a bit. Now this innermost layer, there's a layer of cells here next to the lumen. It's called the endothelium. Okay, endo meaning inside, and so it means that it's the inside layer of cells. It's just one layer of cells here called the endothelium. And the inside part of the artery, this is where the blood flows through, called the lumen. The lumen. Right, you've seen that word before when we talked about the small intestine lumen. So here's the lumen of the blood vessel. Alright, please use the word lumen. Do not call it the whole of the blood vessel. Alright, so what's the function of the arteries? Now you can actually feel the blood flowing through your arteries is you take your pulse. And there are several ways, and we'll do this in class together, right? That you can take your pulse. So what's the function of the arteries? Well, the main thing is that the arteries transport blood away from the heart, right? So they take blood directly from the heart, and the blood is being transported at a high pressure, right? So imagine if I'm taking blood from the heart pumps, and the moment the heart pumps, blood moves into the artery. So the blood in the arteries are always at a very high pressure. So arteries transport blood directly from the heart at a high pressure. So how are arteries adapted for their function? Now remember, the function of an artery is to transport blood at a very high pressure. So how is the structure of the artery fit this function of transporting blood at a very high pressure? Well, the first thing is arteries have relatively thick muscular walls compared to veins and capillaries. Right, remember this layer here, the smooth muscle and elastic fiber layer. This is especially thick in arteries, and that is to allow the artery to withstand very high blood pressure, so that when blood at a high pressure rushes through, the arteries do not break or get damaged. They can withstand the high blood pressure. Now, another reason for this thick muscular walls and thick elastic layer, okay, it's also called a thick elastic layer, is so that the artery wall is able to stretch and to boing boing recoil, right, which pushes blood along in spurts. Now, what does that mean? Imagine when blood rushes through the artery, that causes the elastic layer to expand out slightly. Okay, it just expands out slightly. Expand. But because it's elastic, it is able to recoil. So imagine it will go back again. It will boing, 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 boing back again into its original shape. And it actually squeezes the blood along the artery in spurts or in a pulse. And when you feel your pulse, what you're feeling is the arteries expanding as the heart pumps and then recoiling back again. That is what you're feeling when you feel your pulse. All right, more on that when we meet in the class. Finally, okay, arteries tend to have a relatively small lumen, right, compared to the overall diameter, the overall size or diameter of the blood vessel. Okay, so the lumen is quite small compared to the rest of the blood vessel. And this partly is to also help maintain the blood at a high pressure. Alright, so that's all for this video. I think I'm going to stop here. In the next video, we're going to look at veins and capillaries. So see you there.